Here in Chattanooga, Pleasant Garden Cemetery is one of the oldest historically black cemeteries in Tennessee. It is the final resting place for leading members of Chattanooga's African American community after Reconstruction and during Jim Crow segregation, as well as tragic figures, including Ed Johnson and at least one of the Scottsboro Boys. 50 years ago, the cemetery was abandoned. In recent years, volunteers have worked on restoring the site. Antwon Baldwin, a student in UTC's Department of Communication and an intern here at WUTC, paid a visit.
For more than a century, Chattanooga's Pleasant Garden Cemetery has served as the final resting place for many African Americans. Beth Murphy and Donovan Brown are members of the African American Cemetery Preservation Fund, the group that now tends to the cemetery.
The cemetery itself was founded in 1890 by R.L. Clegg. He put together a board of 13 other African American entrepreneurs, businessmen, civic and community leaders from Chattanooga to open a cemetery owned by black people for black people.
Now, at 22 acres, Pleasant Garden Cemetery has more than doubled in size and requires a lot of maintenance. Donovan Brown describes restoration efforts by local volunteers.
And just like David Young at Pleasant Garden Cemetery, who has been this stable figure of restoration work on his own mostly for over 30 years.
David Young has been responsible for a lot of the progress at the cemetery.
And I started looking at the cemetery and realized that people that had family buried up here could not get to their grave sites because of all the growth. So then the next step was, I'm going to clear the road. Then over time, I started meeting people up here. One person I met was an attorney that had written the book about Ed Johnson, Leroy Phillips.
Leroy Phillips was a criminal defense attorney and author who in 1999 published a book titled Contempt of Court. The book tells the story of Ed Johnson. Beth Murphy says that was a turning point.
And then when you think of then comes the late 1990s, early 2000s, and that's when Leroy Phillips writes the book Contempt of Court about the story of Ed Johnson. And all of a sudden, boom, it's like the light has been turned on again at Pleasant Garden Cemetery.
David Young remembers when he first found Ed Johnson's grave at the cemetery.
So I told my wife I was going to look for the Ed Johnson grave. So I took the little path, kept walking until I saw a road sign propped up against a tree. And lo and behold, I looked down and there's Ed Johnson's grave.
Beth mentions a few other notable people buried at the cemetery.
You have people like G.W. Franklin, people like Horace Brazelton, who started the first African-American photography studio here in Chattanooga. So you have a whole array of life.
Pleasant Garden Cemetery accepts volunteers for work days and headstone cleaning, and it also hosts hike through history tours. For more information, visit the Pleasant Garden Cemetery page on Facebook. This is Antwon Baldwin for Scenic Roots.